It's cloudy. It's dark. It's raining outside. But that is not going to stop us from learning more words. This is episode 26 of the VictorPrep Vocab podcast. This is Sam. Let's start with going over the words from episode 25. Knell. Knell. That is the sound of a bell, especially when being rung for a death or a funeral. It's also a sound or sign indicative of the death of something or the end of something. Palatial. Palatial. That is resembling a palace in being magnificent or stately, a place that would be fit for a king or monarch. Lethargic. Lethargic. That means drowsy, tired, lacking energy or enthusiasm. Oscillate. Oscillate. That means to waver or vary between differing beliefs or opinions. It also means to physically move back and forth, like a pendulum or a seesaw. Now let's go on to the new words. The first word is ardor. Ardor. That's spelled A-R-D-O-R, or the British spelling, British English, is A-R-D-O-U-R. So ardor. Now, ardor means great feeling, usually positive feeling. So great warmth of feeling, passion, eagerness or enthusiasm. So if you know someone who really supports a certain sports team, they have great passion for that sports team, they have ardor for that team. Or if you know someone who's extremely political, so they are deeply conservative or deeply democratic, they probably have ardor. Some synonyms of ardor are passion, fervor, zeal, intensity, fire, emotion. A way of remembering ardor might be the word adore. Adore, it's very similar. Ardor, A-R-D-O-R, adore, A-D-O-R-E. Adore meaning to have strong feelings for someone, to love someone. That implies a passion, or it implies ardor. Our second word is rustic. Rustic. That is spelled R-U-S, rus, T-I-C, tick, rustic. It's an adjective, and it means relating to the countryside or rural. It also means having a simplicity or a certain type of charm that is considered typical of the countryside. So often the word rustic is used to describe perhaps a country cottage someone might own, or their house in the country. Rustic is generally seen as a positive word. So when you refer to something as rustic, it implies that it has a simplicity, or it's basic in some way, but usually it means it's quite quaint or nice, that it's simple and charming. You could use rustic in a negative way, implying someone is a bit simple, saying, oh, you're a rustic idiot, for example, and that sort of says, oh, you're simple, uncultured, or unsophisticated. But the usual meaning of the term, or the way it's going to be used, is when referring to something to do with the country or countryside. Some synonyms are rural, pastoral, and bucolic. So, while the primary meaning is relating to the countryside or having a charm that is considered typical of the countryside, you also have this secondary meaning, which is simple or uncultured. So, some synonyms on that side are unsophisticated, plain, simple, unrefined even. So, I was trying to think of a way of remembering rustic. It's quite an unusual word to remember. I did imagine the image of some rusting farm machinery left in a field, because rustic obviously sounds a bit like rusty, meaning corroded metalwork, having rust on it. So if you can remember that image of a rusty tractor in a field and a cottage close by, a simple, nice cottage with ivy on the walls that you could describe as being rustic. Our third word is irascible. Irascible, that is spelled I-R-A-S, Iras, C-I-B-L-E, Sible, irascible. So don't forget that SC in the middle of irascible. Irascible means easily angered or characterized by anger. So you could describe a person as irascible, and it would mean they are an angry person, they are easily irritated, easily angered. Most people know at least one person in their life who is irascible. A word that sounds similar and means something similar is irate. Irate, irascible. Irate means extremely angry. Some other synonyms of irascible are irritable, quick-tempered, short-tempered, hot-tempered, testy, crabby, snappish. So imagine that person you know who is the irascible person, someone who gets angry easily, and imagine them getting really angry because something silly happened, and that's how you're going to remember irascible. Or also remember the word irate. Both start with the same three letters. That is I-R-A, and in fact, ira, as in irate, and irascible, IRA in Latin means angry. So that is a root of both of those words. Our fourth and final word today is parry. Parry. P-A-R-R-Y. Parry. Now, there are two meanings to this, both quite different, but in some ways similar, and you'll see what I mean. The first means to ward off physically a weapon or an attack with some sort of counter. So if you imagine you're a sword fighter and someone is swinging at you with their sword, and then you parry the blow with your sword. You move your sword to block the other sword. You have parried their sword. So you have warded off their sword or fended off their sword. So it is a physical move or a block with a weapon, very often a sword. However, there is this second meaning where you can parry verbally, that is in conversation. So if you parry in conversation, that means you have evaded or dodged something, or maybe responded agilely to a question. So if you imagine in debate, if someone makes a point at you in the debate, and you respond with a particularly witty or well thought out response, you might be said to have parried their point. If you imagine yourself in verbal combat with someone and you make a particularly good move or manage to evade or dodge some attack, that is a verbal parry. And that's why it means something like the physical parry. You are getting attacked physically and you can parry with a sword, but if you are getting attacked verbally or in a debate, you can also parry with your wit, parry with your words. Oscar Wilde was a famous English writer who was famous for his wit, and thus he was very good at parrying in conversation with people. Now, let's do a quick review of today's words. Our first word was ardor. Ardor. That means passion, eagerness, enthusiasm, great warmth of feeling. Rustic. That means relating to the countryside or rural. Can also mean simple or unsophisticated or uncultured. Think a simple cottage in the countryside or some rusty farmyard machinery in a field. Irascible. Irascible. Think irate, easily angered, easily provoked, an irritable person. And our final word was parry. Parry, to ward off an attack, especially with some sort of defensive move with your sword, can also mean an act of parrying in conversation or verbally, to turn aside someone's point or dodge it. Now let's go on to our test questions or example sentences. In each sentence, I will refer to one of the words, as always, and you have to look at the meaning of the sentence and think about which word from today that I am referring to. The first time they met, Jack and Rachel were overwhelmed with desire, and they awkwardly fumbled their words and blushed frequently. Jane's cottage in the countryside had a simple charm and was extremely homely despite its lack of modern facilities. The cantankerous zookeeper frequently yelled and shook his fist at children, whom he caught feeding his lions without permission. The shrewd politician was famous for his quick wits and talent for evading questions, while leaving the interviewers feeling foolish. So, those were our words and little test for today. I hope you're all enjoying the podcasts and learning the words. Thank you for the kind emails you've sent me recently. A little shout out to Mohammed, Miriam, David, Dingra, Harry and Hope. Thank you for getting in touch and giving me your feedback. It's always really appreciated. And for anyone else who's new or been listening for a while, please always feel free to email me. It's incredibly welcome. I will email back, even if it takes me a little while. Don't worry about that. I read all of them and I take the feedback extremely seriously. As always, I will suggest leaving a review or a rating on the iTunes page. That helps other people see the podcast because iTunes then rates it more highly. And check out the Facebook page by searching Facebook for VictorPrep. Leave a comment or like the page. Thank you very much. This was run a little late, so sorry about that. But I will see you next time. Bye-bye.